So we're going to go on a guided tour around this place, which is Highgate Cemetery, somewhere in London.
Then they built this chapel where you were waiting. Loads of people say to me, it looks more like a castle. I'm sure you've noticed Highgate's surrounded by walls and fences. It's not the most welcoming place, but of course for our Victorians, that was perfect. When you bought a grave here, first of all, the family own it in perpetuity, forever and ever and ever. You're not allowed to be dug up from here.
Victorian.
Yeah, and London was the biggest city in the world at the time. The problem was 2 million people, but not enough space for the dead. And the Victorians want cremation.
Anyway, well, welcome to the cemetery itself. First thing I need to say, this isn't what it was supposed to be. What would our Victorians have seen as they stood here? They'd have been looking at a beautiful garden, 17 acres of grass, flowers, a few trees here and there. What was the company trying to do? Create paradise. Now you're probably thinking, who the hell is James Selby? Well, luckily the family left some big clues for us. At the bottom there we have a coachman's horn and a coachman's whip, and if we didn't know what they are, we've got these convenient horseshoes for the horses that pulled his coach. Now of course these are upside down, which is normally a sign of bad luck. Well, that's not why these are upside down. It's what Victorians did to show their respect for the dead. Belonged to a man with a wonderful name. He was called General Sir Loftus Otway. He was one of the Duke of Wellington's men fighting Napoleon. Now, if you could go down in there, look, there's natural light, there's 3 skylights, there's a beautiful mosaic floor down there, and shelves with 12 coffins on them. Because that wasn't really for the coffins, it was for the living members of the family. I think Victorians needed this contact with their dead. They would visit graves far more frequently than I guess most of us do. So this is one of our 21st century graves. Some of you may even know the story of this man. He was a Russian spy called Alexander Litvinenko. Part of the secret police with Putin, fell out massively. He left Russia, came to this country, but his criticism of Putin never stopped. And in 2006, Litvinenko was assassinated. 2 friends, turned out to be Russian agents, took him for tea and cake at the Millennium Hotel in Mayfair in London. But what he didn't realise that his tea had been poisoned. It's a very early one. We know that because they're all numbered. Sometimes you'll see the numbers, not always, but that one is number 12. So it's the 12th grave in Highgate Cemetery. Gives you a clue, of course, as to what Victorians were obsessed by, and that was anything Egyptian. When this place opened, 1839, London was gripped by what they called Egyptomania. There was Egyptian nonsense everywhere. Highgate has its fair share.
This one's open, oh my god, they're getting out.
Welcome to the Egyptian Avenue. Now, when I bring groups here, loads of people say to me, oh come on, this is fake. It's so obviously a film set that some company had left behind, and I must admit it does look quite artificial. And if you've seen Fantastic Beasts #2, a lot of that was filmed here as well. In that film they call us Paris, we're not, we're Highgate Cemetery.
They think it's Père Lachaise.
Yes, they think it's BS, but it isn't. We were cheaper, I think. Warner Brothers paid Highgate a lot of money. They can call us whatever they like. So yes, films have definitely been made here, but that wasn't why it was built. This is part of the original cemetery. As you can see, these families, they wanted to be noticed, they certainly wanted to be remembered. And here we are in 2020, still talking about them.
Hello.
It's for ashes. It's called a columbarium, means dovecot. Doves have never lived in there, it's just a fancy name for somewhere to put ashes.
So when I was a child, I always thought it was just holes for doves.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that very pretty.
Until one day he went to London docks just to buy some snake skin to make shoes with, but the snakes were still in them. He'd bought 2 live boa constrictors from a sailor for £75. His wife left him, but George seemed to know what he was doing. In the early 19th century in this country, people really wanted to see exotic wild animals, but you couldn't. No zoos. London Zoo didn't open to the public till the middle of the 19th century. So Wombwell took his snakes in a box and he went from pub to pub to pub. People paid a penny just to look at them. He got his money back, he doubled it, and he thought, I can make a fortune. Well, welcome to Highgate's catacombs. What the hell's going on here? Why the damage? Well, it's not a happy period for us. I'm talking of the 1960s, 70s and 80s. By 1960, the company who owned Highgate basically had gone bust. Really, they'd neglected it, the trees have taken over, but of course that doesn't stop everyone. People climbed over the walls, they wanted to see what was here, a good place to bunk off school, people came to smoke, take drugs, and then there were parties, seances, all sorts of black magic went on. But this damage is down to the story of the Highgate vampire. In 1969, 2, well, they called themselves psychic magicians. They claimed they'd seen a 7-foot vampire floating around the cemetery. And boy, this story just spread like wildfire. And groups broke in with stakes and hammers and garlic looking for the vampire. This damage happened in March 1970. A big gang broke through the gates we've just come in, came in here, smashed these open, pulled the coffins out looking for the vampire. In there are the remains of a man called Robert Liston. And in the first half of the 19th century, he was this country's greatest surgeon. Surgery in the early 19th century was grim. Basically, they were cutting things off your body that had become diseased, and if they didn't cut them off, you'd die. But there were no anaesthetics, so they were sawing your arm or leg off, you were wide awake. And not surprisingly, people avoided hospital as much as they could. So who on earth was Tom Sayers? Well, he was England's champion boxer. Not a boxer with boxing gloves, but with bare fists. It was called bare knuckle fighting. And by 1860, Sayers was seen as England's champion. Okay, when you go home tonight, or your hotel, or wherever you're staying, you turn the lights on, you turn your television on, you charge up those precious mobile phones. I'd like to suggest they all use electricity, as did the hospital, I'm guessing, where you were born. So maybe we should thank the father of electricity, Mr. Michael Faraday. In my opinion, easily one of the greatest scientists ever. He didn't quite invent electricity, but his experiments with electromagnetism means we can use it today. Well, yes, they are buried here, but you won't see them. They were buried in what were called common graves. They were basically massive holes in the ground. The families paid a one-off fee to have them buried. Both cemeteries are full of these common graves. I bet we've walked over some without even knowing it.
I was telling you, I really want to go there because there's a guy with great coffee.
Yeah. It's so great. I sold out. I really want to make you a coffee now, but I'll give it a go anyway.
Okay.
What would you like?
Well, long black for me.
A long black, yeah.
Yeah.
I can definitely do something.
Oh,
like that.
great.
Is it just one?
Oh, 2.
If we could manage 2, that would be brilliant. This is a great coffee, apparently.
Yeah.
Petite Lutte is very happy.
I'm very happy. What does my French girlfriend wants to do on a Sunday? Oh, she just wants to visit a cemetery under the rain.
Yeah.
And have a coffee from a little white tent.
Well, what's the reality of the situation? You've brought me on a date to a cemetery.
Yes.
And this is not the first time you've been here. This is the second time you've been here.
This is the 3rd time.
The 3rd time.
I love this
So that's
place.
how much you love hanging out in the cemetery.
You see, there's no one. You're in London. and at least everyone around you is dead. So here it's really quiet, really peaceful. Nature has taken over death. I love that. It just shows how temporary and frivolous everything you try to build for pride and for eternity is, because it gets taken over by nature, and I love that.
Something the tour guide said that really made sense is that all of these monuments, they're all built by the survivors, and they're all for the survivors. Yeah. You wake up from the dream or nightmare, depending on your perception, and you go, "Oh, that was all just a dream."
Where is Karl Marx? Did you see this one? The philosophers have only interpreted the word in various ways. The point, however, is to change it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good one.
All that is that he's written there is a Facebook status, isn't it? I think
you're right.
I think I've said more profound things on this YouTube channel, and I don't think that's being egotistical. I'm just being objective.
Iraqi communist leader.
Iraqi communist leader
and campaigner for socialism and democracy.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because we're told that communism is the mortal enemy of democracy. So how could a communist leader campaign for democracy? I learned in school that all communist countries were places like Stalin's Russia, where it was a dictatorship, right?
It ended up being a dictatorship, indeed.
Did it start off being elected? Democratic?
No, and the guys in their ideal, because they're fighting for an ideal, they're fighting for equality, everyone being, all the wealth being spread out because according to your needs and not according to your birthplace.
Mm-hmm.
So they start off with this idea, with a very, very high idealism. But then they want to impose their idealism much to people that they start to oppress people who don't think like them, because it's for the greater good. You didn't understand. You have to go to the gulag now. Oh yeah, this one was a real enigma for me last time. Look at this. There are some signs on the tomb. And you're like...
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something to understand.
So it seems like you place your coffee there. And then your sun, here, I got it. On the solstice, the sun shines between the two tips of the obelisk and concentrates and magnifies the sunlight and reheats your now rather cold coffee. I mean, that's not going to hold it up, right?
Not really.
This is my favourite one of all. Yeah, just, dig a hole, throw me in there, bit of wood chip on top, bit of mud. There's no name to say who it was, because it's irrelevant.
As the guides say, God knows my name. Faraday said that. God knows my name, I know my name. Why do I need any gravestone with my name on it?
Yeah.
That's enough.
So there you go, you had a little walk around Highgate Cemetery with us, so you don't need to bother coming on your own now.
It's nice to see it for yourself. You cannot get an experience of the atmosphere if you don't come by yourself, for yourself.
As far as graveyards go, it's one of the better ones I've been in,